Real women.
Real talk.
Real messy.
This is Messy Midlife.
Hi, and welcome back to Messy Midlife. Hi,
Hey,
Karen.
it's so good to see you, Aliza.
You too. So, you know, I think I wanted to kind of jump right in today because something I've been thinking about a lot, and I think we've discussed, off camera and just in our texts and a lot of stuff with family. And I know that a lot of my friends are going through this too, is how do we sit in our boundaries? Like, how do we create the boundaries that actually serve us, right? Like, this is maybe a piece of the selfishness that comes in midlife of really focusing on ourselves. But I think that this is something that comes up for a lot of people at this time. And I think, probably times throughout our lives that we didn't really think about it in the same way. But I know for me, it's coming up in a very, very clear way right now. And I've been thinking about, the boundaries that I need to set or that I want to set with certain people in my life. And it got me thinking about my first experience with that really when I didn't really know I was setting boundaries. And it was a while ago. It was in my early 30s. I think I was in my last year of medical school. And, my mom and I have always had a relationship where sometimes it can feel like tiptoeing around feelings. And it definitely, it's evolved so beautifully since then. But, back then it really felt that way. And I remember I had lost some weight, and in my family, when you lose weight, it's like the best thing that could ever happen. It's a celebration, balloons, like, bells. It's like, nothing else matters, right? Getting into med school pales in comparison to losing weight. Graduating at the top of your class of medical school and getting a residency that you want, like, pales in comparison to losing weight. And, so I had been home visiting. I lost some weight and been back to my parents' house, where I grew up visiting and, hurrah, hurrah. And I went back to school and I remember feeling like really nervous about being asked about it, right? Because being away, this is, before FaceTime existed. This is when iPhones first came out, right? And I remember being really nervous about being asked about it. And of course, I was on the phone with my mom one day and she said, "Oh, so how's your weight?" And inside I was kind of panicking because I thought I knew that if I didn't say what she wanted me to say, there would be a fallout, right? It would be, "Oh, Lisa, I didn't mean anything like that. And why do you always want, I thought it was going to be, um, the dramatics. And I just said, Mom, this is something that's like really personal for me and something that actually makes me worry having to report back on it and can cause some anxiety when I'm thinking that I have to kind of prove myself in that way. And her response was like, I could have never imagined. She was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel that. I totally support you. And I'm just asking because, I want to show support for you. But you tell me from now on when you want to share, you let me know."
That's
And I
so
was like,
gracious.
what just happened? Right? It was like the first time in my life, honestly, like in my early 30s that I had actually stated what I need and set a boundary for myself. And I think what I realized from that is people can't respect your boundaries if you haven't set them for yourself, right? So I think before I had wanted my mom to just psychically know that she, shouldn't ask about that, but I hadn't decided that for myself. Nor had I stated it, but I hadn't even decided that for myself. And that was the big kind of aha moment for me is I don't have to tell my boundaries to everyone. I don't have to say, "This is my boundary with you," but I have to know it for myself and I have to like implement it with myself. And just doing that, I feel like, not to be too woo, but like energetically, people respond to that.
Well, you came to the right place for woo because
Well,
all
you
I can think
love the
about
woo.
all I can think about as you're telling me the story is the moment you decided that for yourself, it's like you shifted into another dimension. And even your mom's response was so different than what you expected, right? It's like
Yeah,
you magically deciding that boundary for yourself magically shifted everything into a whole new universe, a whole new experience of your mother and your relationship with her.
yeah.
And I don't want this to be overshadowed by the woo, but that was a very courageous thing for you
Thank
to
you.
do.
Thank you.
These boundaries, even just recognizing them for ourselves, are hard. It's challenging to imagine our realities in a different way because it can feel really scary in these really big relationships.
Yeah. And I think it's like I call that up in my mind, right? Like I remember back to that when I find myself in situations now where I haven't had good boundaries, right? And so that's something that I have been really working on recently in my life with I don't have to say I'm not doing this, this, this. You can't do this, this, this. I'm saying this is how I want it to be. This is what I'm going to allow for myself. This is how I am going to kind of foster myself being treated.
Yes.
And it makes it easier too when something does come up to then be very clear, right? It's like if I know what I am willing to reply to, what I am willing to respond to, what I am willing to take in from other people, then it helps me when something does come up to say, oh, this isn't it. Absolutely not. And be very clear about that because I think sometimes with enforcing, for a lack of a better word, and standing up in our boundaries, it can feel like we have to justify them to other people or to the people that we're putting that boundary up for. And I think when we're really clear for ourselves, that justification goes away. It's just this is how it is. No is a complete sentence, right? Um,
Yeah.
but I think this. I was talking with a really good friend this weekend about that too, and you know, with her, it was like with her daughter, who's in her 20s and having those boundaries with her daughter with how she'll be treated. And I just think it's something that comes up for us as women over and over again. And so, I was thinking, do we all have to have this kind of experience to show us that before we're able to do it? Or can we realize, oh, this isn't working for me. I
Mm-hmm.
need to figure out what my boundaries are, and they can, even in a loose way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm remembering something I read recently, and it's aligning with this aspect of boundaries, which is there's so much content out there about boundaries, and what you're highlighting is more about the internal declaration of
Yeah,
the boundary, the clarity around what my need is and how that is going to look in different relationships when it comes up. And what I read was differentiating between how we show up in survival mode versus emotional mode versus executive mode. And what I'm hearing from you is really that executive mode. Like when we have that clarity and that alignment about something that feels really true and grounded, we can show up in that executive mode.
yeah,
But so often, and I am totally guilty of this because these are really gray areas that feel uncomfortable, especially when dynamics have been playing out with the same narratives, with the
yeah,
same people for a really, really long time. When we don't have that clarity around that boundary for ourselves, we don't claim it, then we show up in survival mode or emotional mode. And it's really ineffective because we don't have the clarity.
yeah. And that's when we're trying to justify and validate
Hmm.
what we're feeling and why we're feeling it,
Yes.
as opposed to just saying, no, like this is not what I want.
Yeah. Or mind reading.
Yeah,
You've mentioned that. I don't remember if we were chatting this time or
yeah,
before, expecting that they should know this. And it really what that is, and I've also experienced that, I'm too uncomfortable because I actually don't 100% know, and I'm not 100% committed to what my need is with the clarity necessary to be able to communicate it from that place, that executive mode.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes you're figuring it out as you're having the conversation, right? I mean, that was a big thing with for me the first time doing that with my mom was I didn't know what I was going to say, right?
Mhm.
But I figured it out in the moment, and I think the big thing was I wasn't overly emotional. I wasn't taking it as kind of an attack on me, right? I was able to say pretty calmly, like, this is just how it makes me feel. And I think maybe that's, a bigger piece of this is in setting boundaries, we have to be clear in how we feel and clear about expressing how we feel. And I think that that gets really muddled a lot of times as women, right? Like, we're not typically taught from a young age to like stand up and say what we believe.
Or encouraged,
Yeah.
certainly.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was lucky. I had a really amazing dad who really did encourage that, right? He really raised I mean, both of my parents raised 3 very, very strong and independent women. But I think in general, that's why it feels like sometimes like we're wavering. Like we don't know how to do it in a way that doesn't feel like those emotions and those feelings are pent up and it's all coming out, right? Because we don't have a lot of times have the practice of doing it on a regular basis.
Yeah. And I love that perspective of ownership of your experience because it's honoring that the person with whom you're having this conversation, honoring that what they're saying may be fine in a different exchange with another person. You're not saying you're wrong. You're saying that doesn't have a place in our relationship because we want to feel good and we want to connect respectfully. That's beautiful.
I think that I was just actually just about to write this down so I didn't forget, but I think there's a component of it that can also come from the people pleasing side of things, right? Like, so I think for a long time, I thought that me stating what I needed was going to like hurt somebody else or upset somebody else. And um, I had an experience with that in the not too recent past. It was probably 5 or so years ago, 5.5 years ago. And an ex-boyfriend who I had recently split up with, it was his 40th birthday, and a mutual friend was saying like, "Oh, we're gonna do this beach party, you should come." And I was like, "I don't" like, outwardly, I was like, "Okay." And internally, I was like, "I don't wanna go, but I don't wanna make him feel bad that I don't go." My sister was actually here at the time, my sister Bretty, and I remember telling her like, "Will you come with me? You have to come with me." And she was like, "Why are we doing this?" Right? I mean, she's always had pretty good boundaries. She was like, "Why are we doing this? Why are we going to this?" And I was like, "I don't know. I just like I have to. Like, you have to come with me." And so I was on the phone, I think it was on FaceTime actually with my therapist, and I was telling her about this, and she said, "Aliza, you are really pissing me off right now. You are not going to that." And I was like, "Oh my god, yeah, I'm not. Why am I doing this? I'm gonna go be uncomfortable so that someone else isn't. Someone that treated me poorly, I'm worried about making them feel uncomfortable or sad, like, because 'cause I'm not going, but I'm gonna make myself do that." And so I literally as I was on the FaceTime with my therapist, texted my friend that was planning it. I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm not going." And she goes, "Oh my god, what happened?" And I said, "Oh, nothing happened. I'm just standing up for myself and I don't wanna go. Like, done." So I think there is that, like, thinking about that, I'm realizing in real time as we're talking that I think a lot of it does come from that pleasing everyone besides ourselves, making sure everyone else is okay,
Yeah.
even if we're not,
Yeah.
and putting other people's comfort and desires above ours.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I this comes up so much for me personally, and it comes up quite a bit in sessions as well. And we label it as the good girl phenomenon, that the good girl is always tending to other people's needs and preferences and making sure everybody is comfortable and following all of these social norms and expectations. And the messy midlife is the time when we are called to break through to the other side of freedom of that, and the process is really, really uncomfortable. And I like your example because it's even though it sounds so straightforward, I know how absurdly complicated it is to be in that situation. And that's the easy example, right? Now apply that to family members, apply that to partners, to children. It gets really convoluted really, really quickly. And what I love about how we're looking at this today is that this is not about them. But that's the good girl dilemma, is that everything we have been trained to always look outside of ourselves for guidance on our own behavior. And this is a complete flipping of that script to bringing our attention inward. And even that, even if we're not setting boundaries yet, just the process of shifting our attention from being externally
Yep.
driven to internally driven can be really uncomfortable. So that might be the starting point for a lot of people. And sometimes it is still for me, you know?
Well, it's like the listening to what we know. And like, I think part of that kind of good girl conditioning is also it teaches us not to listen to what we actually know internally, right? Like we don't pay attention to that because I do think so many of us, if we really actually like tuned in and paid attention to like what our emotions and what our bodies were telling us, we would have a pretty clear answer. But I think part of that good girl conditioning and that people pleasing way of being is to ignore that,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I think a lot of us have done that too in all different types of situations and relationships. Is like, you know that something isn't right, but it's easier and it keeps the peace to just kind of keep going with it. And I think that's one of the things that really has shifted for, I know, us in the midlife and the perimenopause, and that can make it feel messy is that we're not just going along with that anymore. We're not saying, I'm going to give up my comfort so that somebody else can have theirs,
Yes.
right? And I think that there is a big part of that that is listening to ourselves. I think that we as women, and this is a, broad generality, but I really do believe that we as women have so much so much there in terms of like our intuitive capacity and our intuitive reasoning, right? And I think we're starting to wake up a little bit and listen to that. And I think that's what like kind of the fuck's falling away, to some degree is like, I'm not going to listen to the outside noise. I'm not going to listen to what everyone else thinks about things. I'm actually going to listen to what I feel and I think about things. And that's where I'm going to live from. That's where I'm going to move from, right? Is that place of internal knowing as opposed to what's going to make everybody else more comfortable.
Yes. Yes. It reminds me of how the times when I have taken that courageous step and communicated it in relationships where it came up, because I'm with you in that I thought boundaries were about expressing to the world what is right for me. But it's really more about, I know what's right for me. And when somebody is not in alignment with that, I can gently, lovingly let them know that that isn't in alignment with me. And if that doesn't work for them, then that doesn't work in the relationship. And if it's important to them and they can align with it, then we can continue a relationship. And it reminds me of the quote by the poet Prentice Hemphill, who said that boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously.
I love that. Yeah, because we're not letting go of what is important to us, right?
And it makes the relationship better because we can show up
Yeah.
as our whole selves. by honoring what is important to us.
Yeah, I think it's like, it's part of like thinking about when we think about what is right for us, right? And trusting our voice and trusting what we know, right? If it's something I've really been working on is like, if it is not a resounding yes, then it's a no,
That has been
right?
my mantra lately. Yes.
And even like little things, like I was scheduled for a hand surgery for carpal tunnel, and it was at the end of April, and I was getting really worried about it. I just like it felt I was anxious about it. I didn't know. I just felt like, oh my God, can I take on one more thing right now? And I realized like this isn't an absolute yes for me. And helping me understand like this isn't I'm not clear that this is a yes, made it a lot easier to say no for right now. It's not, no, I'm never going
Yes.
to do this, but it's like the rush of feeling like I have to do this by April 30th and have all these things in place in a very like busy time in my life. It's not the right thing. And there are other ways that I can manage that don't feel as huge for me right now.
Yes. Yes. Something as small as that surgery and something really, really big. Like my relationship with my mom is something that um, has been obviously a part of my life forever. In the Mexican community, connectedness to it's a very matriarchal society. Connection to the mother is very important, and my mother has shown up in the absolute best way that she can, given her own history, and has done a lovely job of it in many ways. And I always longed for a deep connection with her that is not the type of person that she is. And it has taken me the majority, well, all of my life up until very recently to be willing to accept the fact that that's not something that she can do. If it's not a resounding yes, has been something that I've really been leaning into with the frequency of communication with my mom. And, I went through a period of grieving the fact that we are fundamentally really different in a lot of ways. And in other ways, we're very, very aligned and very similar, but it's just expressed differently. And so I was the one calling. I was the one, making all of the efforts that I felt were expected of me. And also in an effort to build a deeper connection that just wasn't really happening in the way that I wanted it to. And so from a day-to-day perspective, being able to say, it's okay. It's okay that it's not a resounding yes to call her every day. Calling her multiple times a week is what feels like a resounding yes. And it's been wonderful for me, all the while on a bigger scale and a bigger picture, healing within that relationship. I've shifted from a primary mission of deep connection with her towards love and appreciation for who she is, what she brings. And that boundary had to happen within myself, and perhaps she was also setting a boundary by the fact that knowingly or not, that she
The
just
same
can't
thing.
do that level of connection because that's just not who she is. And so finding peace with that within myself has been very liberating. And just going back to that, if it's not a resounding yes, it might feel really uncomfortable at first. And it did for me. I've also utilized that same test, if you will, with some really big issues in my life, some life and death issues. And I mean, complicated. And even in those situations, it's at least something to consult, right? And for right now, love that. I love adding that because it takes a lot of pressure off. Maybe it's just today. Tomorrow might be different. And I can ask myself that same question again tomorrow.
Yep. Yeah, it doesn't have to be this like absolute finite decision, but it's tuning into what feels right for me right now.
Yes.
Yeah, and not having like these huge swings, right? It's not like we're not changing who we are and like how we live our lives day to day, but it's like those small things do make a difference with I think also building up our confidence to know that. right? Like, it's when we are not used to listening to ourselves and listening to what feels right, and we're just doing, it can take time to really understand what is a yes for me, what
Mm.
is a no for me, right?
Yeah, and asking that question can just provide that sacred pause. Just enough of a break, of a breather to remember, right, I may still decide that this is what needs to be done because not everything feels amazing of the things that we have to get done, especially with children. But I matter too. And if this is consistently not a resounding yes for me, then perhaps I need to look at alternatives.
Yeah, I need to, like, dig deeper on that. Yeah, I think it tells us a lot about ourselves too, right? Like, why are we saying yes to things that are a no?
I think we covered that.
Yeah.
The good girl phenomenon, the people
Yeah,
pleasing.
yeah.
Yeah. And undoing all of that. That's where we are right now together, thankfully.
So any of our listeners, we would love to know from you, what are times when you've said yes, when you wanted to say no? Let us know.
Yes. All right. We'll see
Okay.
you next time, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
If our messy is your kind of messy, we'd love for you to rate, review, and follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
We'd also love to know what's on your mind. If you were to join us, what would we be talking about? Email us at messymidlifepodcast@gmail.com or message us on Instagram or TikTok.